Okay, good evening. My name is Dana Treichler. I'm an adult services librarian at Princeton Public Library, and it's my pleasure to host tonight's program. We have audience members both online and in person at the library here, so I want to welcome everybody, regardless of how you're joining us. I also want to welcome our two presenters. So tonight we'll hear from health and fitness advocate Randie Rubin, as well as Marian Reinson, to learn how the consumption of sugar impacts your health, where sugar is hidden in common foods and alternative sweeteners to use. Marian Reinson is the executive director of Eating for Your Health. Marian has been leading the nonprofit since September of 2019, and before that, she spent her time working with businesses and nonprofits in the development of their business and marketing strategies. She fell in love with Eating for Your Health, formerly Suppers, after participating in the garden program with founder Dor Mullen. Marian soon started gardening more, making her own sauerkraut, and made gradual changes to cook and eat in a healthier way. Before I turn this over to Marian, I just want to note a few housekeeping items. This program is being recorded and will be uploaded to the library's YouTube just a few days after the program, so feel free to check back then if you miss anything or just want to share it or recap. If you're joining us online, we recommend using the Zoom app for this event rather than operating from the browser. The app just tends to work a bit better. Live transcript is enabled for the program, so you can turn it on and off via a button at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you have any comments during the program, please enter them in the chat box. If you have a question for the speakers, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. For those of you who are here with me in the library, just relay your questions to me. I'll enter them into the Q&A box so that the presenters can address them as the program continues. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to turn things over to Marian.
Well, thank you and welcome everyone from wherever you are. We are going to try and engage you, whether you are sitting in the community room at the library or sitting at your home. We want this to be interactive, and if there's something that's unclear to you, or if you have any questions, please, you're welcome to either raise your hand like Beverly, I see that you are, or put your questions in the chat. I knew that I was really along a different path after working together with Dar and the garden and learning everything that I was learning about just feeding your body and your brain, when I was took a surprise weekend trip, and I'd started making my sauerkraut, and I had to find somebody to babysit my sauerkraut because it needed to be burnt for 3 days. So Dorothy was that person, and but it's just remarkable how just over time small incremental changes can make a big difference in the way that you feed yourself. So without further ado, I want to introduce our presenter today, Randie Rubin. Randie is a health and fitness guru with more than 30 years experience. She's passionate about educating people to become healthier, happier, and more energetic with good nutrition and exercise. With a background as a home economist and dietetic technician, Randie specializes in nutrition. She's recently completed her education as a functional nutrition counselor. And on the fitness side, Randie is a certified Pilates instructor and personal trainer. She's got a lot of energy. And Randie's mission is to educate individuals about their bodies, enabling them to be their own advocate in their personal health journey. And when I met Randie, when we were talking about maybe doing some presenting together, and she just started using the language that we use, and just the whole thing, the concept of how every individual can really make a difference in your own health. You can go to a practitioner, you can go to somebody for help, but you're the one who knows best about what works for you. So it's my pleasure to introduce Randie.
Hi. As you know, my name is Randie, and let me tell you a little bit how I went on my route to being so interested in nutrition. Many years ago, when I was 16 years old, I went to a talk at a library about juicing vegetables and fruits. And I was just so excited when I heard about all these nutrients you could get and all these things you could do with your body by juicing. So of course I come home and I tell my mother, who is a European, so she kind of understood right away. I said to her, Mom, we have to get a juicer, then we can do the herbs and we can do this and we can do that. And with her German accent, she said, "Oh yeah, we'll get juicer." So we went out, we bought a juicer. And back in the day, the juicers are not like they are now. They were hard to clean. They were big and they were bulky and they were heavy, but we learned how to juice. And that was my initial feeling about the idea of nutrition. Then by the time I wanted to go to college, I started looking into nutrition programs, and nobody had more of a holistic type of nutrition that I was interested in. They had, you become a registered dietitian, you could become a home economist, you could this, that, but it really didn't involve the whole body. It was a totally different type of program. So I figured, okay, I'll become a home economist. Did that. Then I decided, okay, I better learn a little bit about dietetics. So I did a 2-year program as a dietetic technician. I worked in all aspects of dietetics, and I decided that's not what I wanted to do. I did not want to be, excuse the expression, a person hiding in the basement of a hospital, telling people the meals that they send up that we all know are most of the time horrible when you're in the hospital eating. That was not my goal. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach people good nutrition, about their body, how they can be their own advocate in their health journey. So lo and behold, I spent the next number of years working in the pharmaceutical industry, and then going into the fitness industry for a number of years. And a few years ago, I decided I wanted to go back to school and go into more of a holistic nutrition. So I became a functional nutritionist. So we're going to talk a little bit about my pet peeve, which is sugar. And I don't want you to get the wrong idea. If you have a sweet, that's why it's called sweet tooth, bitter truth, is that there are ways to have your cake and bake it too. So I just want to let you know that everything is connected. We are all unique and everything matters. And I just want you to also know that everybody's body is different. So if I eat a baked potato, my sugar glycemic index may go up just a little bit, but Marianne's index may go up a lot. So it's very, very important to be very body aware when you eat food, especially when you're eating foods that are very, very high in sugar, because you will feel a difference in your body. Pain in your body is often a sign that something has to change, whether it's arthritis, whether you have belly pain, whether you have psoriasis, you can get adult acne. Something emotional, whether you get a depression, whether you have anxiety. Our hearts and our bodies give us a message. When we fail to pay attention to this message, you know things can get worse. Ironically, when you don't pay attention, we become aware that the pain maybe become more. And if you ignore it, it's not going to go away. It may turn into an autoimmune disease. Right now, 1 out of 12 women have some type of autoimmune disease, which is kind of scary. And men, I think it's something like 30% compared to 70%. Most women have autoimmune disease. You figure we have to deal with that also. We add that on.
So, and that also is really, it relates to our concept of how you feel is data, right? So if you start to really pay attention to what happens when you eat in a certain way, and it can even be healthy ingredients that don't work for you.
Absolutely.
So really paying attention to that, how you feel is data, because it does all matter. And if you see, when you eat, name the ingredient, spinach, for example, your digestion isn't, you're having dis-ease with your digestion. That means that raw spinach isn't good for you. Try it cooked. Right. So that's exactly. So it's the how you feel is data that we talk about.
Very much so. And I think people don't understand. You can have an allergic reaction. I don't mean as bad as having an anaphylactic reaction, but you can just not feel good if you have gluten or you have certain dairy products or whatever. take note of that, because you can just have a light allergy to
Yeah,
it.
or
Not
right, right.
instead of having just a full, oh my God, I could never have that food again. You can just have
A
a
sensitivity.
sensitivity to different things. So some of the high sensitivity foods are usually things that have gluten in them. And I will stop to tell you one thing. Back in the day, gluten is a protein. Back in the day, when our ground they didn't use the kind of preservatives and the junk that they put into the ground now to grow things, the GMOs and everything else, gluten wasn't a problem. But now, because a lot of things are GMO'd, if you're not eating organic, the ground isn't the greatest anymore. We're losing a lot of the minerals that we normally get from our foods and so forth. We become a lot more sensitive because our body does not know how to break down a lot of the foods now, because years ago, that's not the way the food was. So that's just something to keep in mind. What you eat has a direct effect on your mood, your energy, and your mental function. And food is really the information that we give to the cells in our bodies so that we can grow and function and feel good. If you don't have the right foods, you don't have the right protein, whatever, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to function. You're going to have brain fog. Sometimes people don't understand, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I remember this? Sometimes it's not age related. Sometimes it's the food that you ate. You could either have a sensitivity, maybe your allergies, maybe you just shouldn't be eating that food. And you come up with these different things and you try to go a process of elimination. Maybe the first thing you should check on, well, what did I eat today?
Or yesterday.
Yeah.
Or yesterday. Many people can probably share this experience. If you go to a party or something like that and you eat something that you normally don't eat, and then the next morning you don't have a hangover from drinking, you have a hangover from what you ate. And it's like, true. What happened? What did I do? Because your body isn't used to processing it.
Exactly. So let's talk about the white stuff. I call it the white stuff. Sugar, regular white sugar, contains no fiber, no minerals, no proteins, no fats, no enzymes. All it is empty calories. Now, another thing about the white stuff is that many, many years ago, when they used to get sugar, natural sugar, it would come out like a little brownish color because it did have some minerals and so forth. But now they come large companies think it looks so much better when it's bright white. So what they do is, believe it or not, they use bone shards to put in with the sugar to make it white. And doesn't that feel good that it comes from all different countries, sticking bones in your sugar to make it whiter and to make it so that you get nothing from the sugar? What are some of the problems that this causes? It causes mineral depletion, immune repression, blood sugar balance, or as Dr. Mark Hyman puts it, diabetes, brain function problems, heart disease, yeast growth, teeth and gum health problems. Let's talk a little bit about mineral depletion. The body borrows vital nutrients like calcium, magnesium, potassium, thiamine, chromium, and zinc from healthy cells to metabolize sugar. So when you're eating something with white sugar, like a nice big donut, that's what happens. The donut comes in and the body's like, what's going on here? So they have to literally take all these vitamins and minerals from the cells to metabolize that sugar. And where does that leave you? It can very often leave you metabolically without the vitamins and minerals that you need. And because of the fact that they use so many chemicals in our ground, our vitamins and minerals now are very much on a low. So that's one of the biggest problems, is that, to start off with that. And that's why very often when I'm working with clients, I tell them that most of them probably need, and I'm not a doctor, and I always say, ask your physician about this, but I really believe that you need a good multivitamin And we all need vitamin D, because vitamin D really isn't a vitamin. It really is a hormone. And vitamin D works in all aspects of our diet. And there are many, many other vitamins and minerals that are really, really important, especially for women and as we get older, that we need to have. And please jump in if you have any questions, because I love to talk about and answer questions.
Okay, wait, so Beverly asks, any input about a friend who thought she had gluten sensitivity and was linking her getting hives to this experience, since she later learned that the soy in the gluten-free products was the cause after eliminating gluten-free products that contain soy products.
Oh, that's so interesting. So what are you asking specifically?
So I think that this is a really good question, because we make an assumption that that the gluten might be the culprit, when you really need to look at all of the ingredients.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely. You can't assume, I mean, gluten definitely now, and what I was explaining to Marion before, that many, many years ago, gluten is just a protein. But because of all the GMOs and everything that they're putting in the foods, and the way that plants and everything are grown and everything else, and buying packaged goods and so forth, it's become a highly allergic problem. And it also can cause a lot of digestive problems. So that's very often people will jump to gluten as being one thing to look at. And what I always suggest to people is to start with, maybe for a few days, you start with taking gluten out. Like if you have a reaction to something, you think it's gluten, take the gluten out for a week.
Yeah.
See how you feel.
Right.
And you may find you don't have a problem with gluten. So if you want to eat gluten, that's fine. It may not be the best thing for your microbiome. However, if you don't have an allergy to it, if you choose to eat it, you can eat it. Then you may want to go to dairy, because of all the hormones, because of the way the cows are being farmed now, you may want to go off of dairy, and do that the same way. Do that for a week or 10 days. See how you feel. Some people, when they eat dairy, they don't have a major reaction, but they may feel like a little bloated, or they may get a little upset stomach or whatever, but not enough to really say, oh, even think about there's a problem in the dairy. But if you're really aware and you take it out, and you may find that you don't have the bloating and whatever, you say, I may have a sensitivity to dairy.
Or it could be something else that's in the dairy. So a lot of the sugar-free products have some sugar alcohols in them.
That's right.
And a significant number of people have digestive issues when it comes to sugar alcohols. So then the same thing when it comes to the gluten. If we look at I can't say the way that bread is being grown now, wheat is being grown now, but at one point, glyphosate, which is Roundup, was heavily used in the crops, in the harvesting process. It's so that's, I mean, so the one, when I had asked, actually I'd asked Dorothy if there's going to be one food that I want to eat organic, what should it be? And she said bread. So it's also looking at the, it might not be gluten that you're sensitive to. It might be something else that's in the product. It might be same thing with dairy. It could be another ingredient that's in the product that you're eating. And then also looking at, does it happen when you're eating an organic product? And then also just really moving away from those highly processed foods. Again, the white is the sugar, the white is the flour. They've been processed so much that anything that was of any nutritional value is now processed out.
What's really, really interesting when you talk about bread is that in Europe, all the things that we put into our ground, they do not allow in Europe, which is amazing to me. Like,
our flour is illegal in Europe.
It is totally illegal.
So it just
it
says something.
It says something, and I think it's something that we should all be angry about, because the things that are in the ground right now can really hurt your body. And that's why you have to be your own advocate and understand what may be good for you, what may not be good for you, what you're going to choose to eat, and why you're choosing to eat it.
And if you can afford it, and if you have access to it. So, I mean, this is something that we're looking to address in those economically disadvantaged communities, where we can talk about this all we want, but you can't find a organic loaf of bread somewhere, or if you do, you can't afford it. So what are those options? But really, it's again introducing more of those whole foods that are not processed. But that's probably a whole other talk. So.
Yeah, that is a whole other talk. But the one other thing that I would suggest about bread, and this is what I do because I love bread, is that I buy, it's called a fitness bread, and it's made in either, you can get two. One is made in Germany, and the other one is made in Norway. And you can either get it on Amazon, good old Amazon, or you can get it at Wegmans. And it's a great bread. You must toast it. Otherwise, it's a little bit mushy. It's very grainy. It has no sugar in it. It's all seeds and good, healthy grains. And you know, when you eat that, you don't have to worry about what's going in there. So we do have another question.
Has the recommended daily allowance of vitamin D changed? I've been told there is now controversy concerned about taking too much. So this is where, when it comes to supplements, and Dr. Benito, our chief medical advisor, has weighed in on this often, you really need to figure out where you're starting from.
Absolutely.
So to say what is a recommended daily allowance for me, who has, may have very, very low levels of vitamin D, versus somebody else who, has a higher level, that would be different. So really having your vitamin D levels tested is the only sure way to do that. And interestingly, you have to request it.
Yes,
If you have blood work done, you might assume, even if you're having blood work done over bone health issues, which vitamin D is critical in your bone health, you will not be necessarily automatically tested for vitamin D, and your insurance may not cover it. But it's something that is really important to know, because there's times when you really need to boost your vitamin D because your levels are so low, or you might be okay. So I'm sorry, Amy, I didn't have a defined answer for you, but you really need to start with where you are to know what you need to bring your levels to the desirable rate.
And I'll weigh into that as well. Vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat soluble vitamins. These are the vitamins that will stay and build in your body. The other vitamins, like the B complex vitamins and so forth, those are water soluble vitamins. So what I tell people, because I take a lot of them, that I probably have the richest pee in Bucks County because I take so many good vitamins. But I have very, very low D as well. And like Marion said, the best thing is to know where you're starting with it. And you must get your vitamin D tested every time you go get blood work. Now, I would have an argument with, because I know the insurance company, which is crazy to me, because like I said, D is involved in almost everything that goes on in your body. It's considered now a hormone, that I would have an argument with the insurance company to cover that, because it's something we absolutely need to check. And so is 5,000 milligrams still, I mean, maybe we're all unique. Everyone's different. How I process D may not be the way you process D. I found out that my D was so low at one point that a physician put me on 50,000 units of D. It was a prescription item. And I had to take that for a number of weeks just to get my D up. So D is really important, but you really need to know exactly what you need. And you don't want to take too much, because the same thing, not that you really have to worry, but if you really are taking a lot of it, like if you're taking a multi and then another D and so forth, that D will be in your cells. So you really have to work with your physician on that. We have another question.
So Debbie Miola asks, do all sugars, maple syrup, rice syrup, and etc. react in your body the same as white sugar?
No. When things have other vitamins and minerals in them, they will not break down the same way as white sugar. Now, yes, everything goes into glucose, but the breakdown is different. And also what I was going to discuss, and I'll just skip right over to that area, is that when you have something sweet, have it with a protein, have it with a fiber, because if you do that, it totally metabolizes different in your body. It doesn't give you that really, really high swing up and then you go down and you're like, how come I don't feel so well? That's an important thing. So let's say you're having, for example, a piece of pie and it's at home. You can put a little scoop of yogurt on that. Then you're getting some protein on there. Or you can I eat quinoa all the time. I just happen to love it. And if I'm going to have something sweet, I will like have some quinoa and then I'll have something sweet. And I say, okay, now I have my fiber. Let it go down at the same time. So the rice syrup, the maple syrup, I'm going to give you a listing and you're going to get it in your packet. That's going to have all the products that I recommend, and most nutritionists recommend, that you can use for sugar, and all the sugars that we don't recommend and that break down really, really fast. There is another question here.
So one other thing I just wanted everybody to know that is there are handouts with a lot lot of the information
Yes,
that Randie's talking about that we'll give to you. So it's a pretty comprehensive packet. So I'm just gonna grab a pen.
Okay. Do you recommend breads without yeast to eliminate sugar? I'm interested in understanding what recommended ingredients might be including a potential sugar substitute when evaluating recipes for homemade bread. Good question. I tend to use organic stevia and monk fruit sugar when I bake. I have used date syrup. I use real maple syrup, not Mrs. Butterworth's now.
Well, and also even you have to look and make sure that there isn't added sugar in
Correct.
a maple syrup.
Right.
It will say pure, the claim might be that it's maple syrup, but there can be added sugars. Our honey guy told us that.
Right, exactly. And they're very, very often, they really deceive you. A lot of these large companies really, really deceive you. And that's why in the package, you're going to get a list of every single thing that can be white sugar. And they put it dextrose, viscose, this oats, this, that.
Hundreds of names. There's
Hundreds of names to confuse you.
Mhm.
And they all mean white sugar. And
Or that process.
that real process stuff. It's just
So without yeast, a bread without yeast, I don't know anything about that. So that's something.
Well, I don't bake my own bread, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you with names of breads without yeast. I think I may have one, but I don't want to tell you until I'm 100% sure.
Might be your dense fitness bread.
Yes, I think the fitness bread may not have yeast because it's very, very dense.
I think I've picked it up. It's a dense.
I actually have.
It's a dense block of bread.
It is a dense block of bread.
Somebody asked for the brand name. Do you have a brand name?
I will look that up for you before the end of the
but you'll
presentation.
It's in that like health, like where there's sometimes like there's just different grains that they're different breads. You'll see it in that kind of section of the bread aisle, perhaps, or even in the maybe like the organic.
Well,
I don't know.
It depends on the store, but if you go into if you use Amazon and you go into Amazon and you put in fitness bread, it will come up. And usually what they do is they send you a packet of 3 breads. That's where they sell. You can get a packet of 3 or a packet of 12. And you can keep those in the freezer and then take each loaf out as you want to use it. And like I said, please put it in your toaster, because otherwise you're not going to like me.
So if people are asking about the packet, Dana, I just want to check in with you. Will you be able to email a PDF packet to everybody that's registered?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. All right. So yeah, so everybody will get it. And if you don't email me, and I'll put my email address in the chat.
Yeah, so the Zoom people, of course,
Yes.
they will get the packet.
Yep, and if you've registered, so you'll be getting it. Okay, all right, so we're good with questions.
Okay,
Oh,
and keep asking.
Oh,
us
the Indian chapatis
this
flatbread are
flatbread.
made with that yeast.
Yeast.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it. I think I also have a, believe it or not, a yeastless bagel recipe. If you go into my Instagram, which is the holistic with a W, holistic detective, you'll see my picture. I put in recipes of every other day, and I'll be happy to put a recipe in there with I believe it's a bagel recipe, and I will look at some other bread recipes that don't have yeast that I probably have at home. Okay, so
It's hard to find baked goods though that are a substitute. So sometimes it's not even worth trying if you all the time. But that's again personal preference, right?
Right. Exactly.
So.
Exactly. So let's talk about how sugar affects blood, how white sugar affects blood sugar. And it is quite directly. Simply when you eat carbohydrate, any kind of white carbohydrate food such as noodles or white bread. You know what I say we should do with white bread? You can pick up glass with it and you can clean windows with it, but you don't want to put it in your mouth.
You don't.
The foods that are made up with sugars and starches, your blood sugar rises and it releases the hormone insulin. Insulin helps your cells draw sugar from your bloodstream to use as fuel. Insulin unlocks the cell's glucose channels. This is what allows the glucose to leave the bloodstream and enter into your fat and muscle cells where glucose can be used as energy. Glucose levels drop after that since the sugar is taken up by the cells and the pancreas switches off the secretions of insulin. This is when the body is in balance and not overburdened by a lot of sugar. When this is not the case, if we're not healthy or we're in optimal balance, too much sugar and refined carbohydrates consistently over time without anything to slow down their digestion, like not having it with a protein and not having it with a fiber, more insulin is released and triggers your cells to draw sugar more quickly from your bloodstream. The rapid rise makes all your you good at first, then the sugar in the blood falls quickly. So that's where you get that high rise and then you suddenly get tired, you're grumpy, you're overwhelmed, you can be spacey, and that's that drop, which you're not going to get from eating good healthy fats or protein, or even when you eat that with the white stuff. Now, a lot of people are talking about insulin resistance. You hear that everywhere now. Now, everybody has insulin resistance. Everybody doesn't have insulin resistance, but many people do. Excess sugar, the stuff that our cells don't need for energy, is stored as glycogen. That's a food storage molecule. Emptying your stores in between, the pancreas detects there's too much glucose in the blood, so it pumps out even more insulin to do its cleanup. But the cells become resistant, whereby insulin resistant, because there is no more room to accept into the cells the sugar. The doors are shut and locked. Ultimately, the insulin helps glucose to find its way to your fat cells, and it is stored as fat. So that's when it gets confusing about fats, because people think that you eat fat and you get fat. That's not so. It's the sugar that is the big culprit in gaining weight and gaining fat. And very often the fat comes, in men you can see it right away. It's usually right in the girth, right in the stomach. Women sometimes luck out and it goes in all different places, and sometimes they don't luck out and it's
the waist or
the waist
or wherever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not just the insulin, the fat also affects the sugar spikes. It also spikes your adrenaline and puts you under undue stress. There's undue stress on the whole body. It affects your brain chemistry, and they now call it inflammation of the brain. There's a lot of research now that came out that depression and anxiety is inflammation of the brain, and what makes it worse? Sugar.
Yeah, and that's where I think that so humans weren't meant to eat this way, right? Like
Correct.
humans, when we were, back when people were harvesting their food and we weren't eating animal proteins with every meal, and we were, gathering the nuts and the seeds and growing the plants and gathering the berries. And even when we had other flowers or some of the processed foods, we just weren't eating them all the time. We didn't have the ability to bake our own breads. You had to go to a baker. You had a treat every now and then, maybe on a Sunday dinner, maybe it was a birthday dinner. There was a treat occasionally. It was not dessert after every meal. It was not dessert after every dinner, because you're not fueling yourself by eating that way. So when you look at the these processed foods and these processed sugars that many people crave and really enjoy, what happens is your brain senses that sugar but gets no nutrients.
Exactly.
So it's saying, I didn't get anything, you better eat again.
So
that's the cycle. And
and going back to that cycle is going back to addiction. Most people don't realize that sugar is such an addictive substance. They equate it with cocaine and heroin, believe it or not. And that's why very often, don't blame yourself. Most people don't know that it's very, very difficult. If you're having sugar on an everyday basis, you wonder why at 4 o'clock I have to have that cookie and a cup of coffee, or a couple cookies and coffee, because your body, you're addicted to getting that dopamine high and make yourself feel better. And that is an addictive behavior. And we're going to go over how we can get off that addictive behavior and go from a slow train and not go on to a fast train. So
and we just like to make people aware that information is what you need.
Absolutely.
And understanding how much sugar might be in something that you're eating and you don't intend to eat that much. So, having a muffin and a glass of orange juice is starting you off with about, I don't know, 16, 20 teaspoons of sugar.
Can you imagine?
Well, I mean, but you do.
You do.
And so it's really, and you'll get into label reading later,
Right.
But anyhow.
Okay, so we have another question here.
So there's the question about, is there such thing as a healthy gum? I chew gum when I teach to keep my mouth hydrated, but recently noticed the ingredients look a little scary.
Okay, what I will tell you, and I probably can find a name of a gum, and if you send a note to Marion, so I can give you the exact name of it, but I believe it's xylitol, if I'm not mistaken, is in certain gums, and actually that helps with the bacteria on your teeth. So I'm not sure if it's xylitol.
I think it is.
Or yes,
I think it is.
That I'd have to look it up. Yeah. But I believe if you have a gum with xylitol, I wouldn't say there's any gum that's healthy. But if you're asking what gum could you choose without having a problem and maybe good for your teeth, you would get a gum with xylitol in it, and that will help the bacteria, keeping the bacteria off your teeth. That's a good question. Let's talk a little bit about the glycemic index and the glycemic load. You may have heard about that. I believe in the packet, if I'm not mistaken, I might have put in a listing of a glycemic index listing.
I don't know.
And if I did not,
I can send a blog link.
Yeah,
that we have.
There are many, many blog links. Oh, okay. She'll send you the blog link. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful tool to use to look at your sugar grams of different foods. Now, what's the difference between the glycemic index and the glycemic load? They used to use the glycemic index for many, many years, and they realized there was one problem with it. You could look up something like a carrot, and it may have the same amount of sugar as something that is sweet, but it didn't talk about the fiber in the carrot. So that's when they added in the glycemic load. So that incorporates the fiber in there, and it's a little bit more accurate. Another way you can discern these things is if you go and you look, and we'll talk about labeling, we'll jump right over to labeling. Let's say you have a label and you're looking and it says 16 grams of sugar. Okay, you say, well, what does that really mean to me? If you take the number 4 and divide it into the 16, the number that you get is the amount of sugar packets. You know, those little sugar packets that you get if you're in a diner and they're sitting on the side? It would be like 4 sugar packets in that one particular item, if it's 16 grams. So take the number 4, and when you look at any back label, divide that into the number that you see, and that will be the amount of sugar per packet that you're having. And that's pretty scary.
Well, I always tell people, no, it's pretty much in any presentation that we give. If you remember one thing, it's 4 grams of sugar is a teaspoon.
Right.
And Americans don't think in grams.
Right.
So, but it's a teaspoon. So when a can of Coke has 39 grams of sugar, a little yogurt that is now, I mean, fermented foods, really, really great for you.
Right.
But you could be starting with 16 grams of sugar in a lemon yogurt that you thought was going to be really healthy for you. Sprinkle on some granola and you've got even more sugar. But, if you're not really looking at the label and understanding what that means, that 16 grams is 4 teaspoons, it's not what you intended to do. So this is the knowledge is power thing.
An interesting thing, my daughter and son-in-law were just in Paris, and my daughter called me and said to me, Mom, oh, the bread is so good here and this and that. You told me that I could have bread here, that it's healthy. Whatever. When she came back to California, to her home, her and her husband had upset stomachs for days after, because they started eating the way, and they eat healthy, but the food was so different. Their food is fresh. It doesn't have the preservatives in it. It doesn't have all the kinds of things that we lovely have in our country. Nothing against the USA, but when it comes to sugar and other things, we have a lot of it. So there was a really big difference of how she felt eating the food in Europe and eating the food in this country. I'm going to go over a little bit about cancer and sugar. Scientists from the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, the National Blood and Lung Institute, Center for Disease Control, and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health found an association between those who died of cancer and those with high blood levels. Looking at the data for 3,054 adults ages 30 to 74, the second National Health and Nutrition Survey motility study, the participants were with impaired glucose tolerance were nearly twice as likely to die from any type of cancer than those with normal blood sugar levels. U.S. impaired glucose tolerance is an independent predictor for cancer mortality. Another thing is sugar also feeds tumor growth. Cells feed on glucose. In his book, Life Over Cancer, Dr. Andrew Weil, MD, and Keith Block state that tumors are gluttons for glucose. They consume blood sugar at a rate of 10 to 50 times higher than normal tissues. So that's something to keep in mind. Unfortunately, most medical schools teach one class in nutrition, if any. So, and that's a class that I don't think most medical doctors pay a whole lot of attention to when they're in medical school, because there's so many other things to learn. It's not their fault. They don't know this information. And that's the important part of when you learn about these different things and you're interested in this, this helps you if, God forbid, you get any kind of immune disease, cancer, whatever, you'll know the right questions to ask. You'll know you can go to certain books, certain information that you can decide for yourself how you want to plan your diet so that you feel like you're going to have the best way to feel the best when going through any time of medical problem. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to empower people, to give them knowledge so that they feel like they can control their bodies and their health throughout their life. And the more knowledge you know, the better off you're going to be. And I know, for example, that when my older brother was sick with cancer, the doctor said to him, I don't care what you eat. He said, I just want you to eat so you gain weight. And I was like, so he called me on the phone and I, worked with him on that. Unfortunately, he had a very bad cancer and he passed away, but he did live a lot longer than he could have, and he felt better. So that's a perfect example. He was a great oncologist. He loved him, but he knew nothing about nutrition. So, unfortunately, they don't know. So you have to learn for yourself so you can empower yourself.
Yeah, sugar does fuel inflammation. Sugar fuels inflammation. So if you're having any issues with inflammation, processed sugars, we're talking about processed sugars here.
Yes.
They fuel inflammation. They do fuel tumor growth as well. So I don't know how we're doing with time.
Oh, okay.
But Dana, this runs till 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know where, but I know we want to get to some recipes, but also, do you recommend eating sugar-free or less sugar Greek yogurt? Look at the ingredients. So they might take out the sugar and put something else in. So if you have they're sugar-free, most flavored yogurts have some kind of sweetener in them.
They do.
So having a plain yogurt and adding your own sweetener, your own fruit, your own whether it's honey or whatever, even just cinnamon and a little bit of honey it could really just brighten the flavor. And then just adding nuts or seeds or fresh fruit and dried fruit, but being aware of the serving, because the amount of sugar that's in a piece of dried fruit is the same amount of sugar that's in the whole fruit. So if you're eating like 12 apple slices, that's a lot more than one apple. So you're going to be getting a lot more sugar in that. So
and not only that, when you have dried fruit, as the fruit dries, it creates more sugar.
Okay.
So if you're having an apricot, or you're having a date, or you have a regular grape versus a raisin is going to have a much higher glycemic index than a grape will.
Okay.
Because same with like a banana. If you have a green banana,
different food.
That's very healthy.
It's
a different food. But you have a banana that's got a little soft, it's really sugary, your glycemic index is going to go straight up.
Different food.
So it is a different food. A little bit about food addiction. The 2009 study in the Journal of Food and Addiction proved that sugar is 8 times as addictive as cocaine. Hard to believe. We are all overdosed at an average of 22 teaspoons of sugar per person in the US. When you continually to use sugar, you process foods, your dopamine receptors will need to be more. What happens with dopamine is what gives you the get up and go. We've got 2 hormones, the serotonin and the dopamine. The serotonin kind of keeps you like this, feeling good, upbeat, but relaxed. Dopamine is something that says, I want to try this new project. I have the energy to do it. What happens is if you're having sugar, you're having an addictive substance and it generates the same amount of pleasure as dopamine. So what happens is you get a tolerance from the sugar and your dopamine it starts lowering because you keep putting in more sugar. So that's another thing you want to keep in mind. And then people say, well, why not switch to artificial sweeteners? If losing weight was all about calories, that would be a great way of doing it. That is what Coca-Cola wants everybody to believe in their Diet Coke. A 14-year study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition discovered that diet soda raised diabetes more than regular sugar in soda. That's diet soda. Okay. Women who drank 12 ounces of diet soda a week had a 33% increase risk of type 2 diabetes. Women who ate 20 ounces had a 66% increase risk of diabetes by having artificial sugar. And we're not even talking about your body trying even to metabolize this substance that it doesn't really understand what it is. Artificial sweeteners are 100 to 1,000 times sweeter than regular sugar. They trick your body to pump out more insulin, the fat storage hormone, which leads to more belly fat. They confuse and slow down your metabolism, so you burn fewer calories, they make you hungrier, and they have you crave more sugar and starchy carbs. Yeah. So some suggestions, if you want to do any kind of detox and one thing at a time, you may try no gluten, do that, no dairy, no processed foods in boxes. Anytime you see boxed foods and there's like hundreds of ingredients on it, put it back on the shelf.
Yeah, there are options that have 5 or 6.
That's right.
So
that's right.
That's a nutritional harm reduction. Another one of our concepts that we talk about. The pillars.
Right. And so some of the things you can do. What can you do with the sugar, and what can you do to get off this fast train and get on a slow, even train? Ample protein with every meal. Only eat complex carbohydrates and always have a fat and a fiber on your plate. This will fuel you. It'll quell your cravings for longer periods of time. Remember, understanding blood sugar, make sure you properly fuel yourself. Watch correlations between food and your mood. And if you have a 4 o'clock slump at 3:30, have a healthy snack. What's a healthy snack? How about a big handful of nuts? Pick a nut that you like. You can have an almonds, you can have walnuts, which gives your omega-3 fatty acids. There's a lot of great brain food in having nuts. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go for the sugar to bring yourself back up. Browning yourself. What is browning yourself? Switch to whole grains, introduce alternative substances to your sweet tooth. And that's what you will get into when you get into your packet. Crowding out is we bring alternatives to take out what we want to get rid of. This allows you to make changes, but not feel deprived. The idea is nobody is going to tell you, I would never tell any of my clients that they can never have their birthday cake or they never can have anything sweet again. Mm-hmm. I made these today, which are dark chocolate, and I call these the yummies. And they have peanut butter in it. They have chia seeds in it. They have a little bit of coconut palm sugar in them. What else did I put? I put in whatever it's in my refrigerator. stir it up, and then I melted some dark chocolate. It was 72% dark chocolate chips with some coconut oil, 2 teaspoons of coconut oil, and I just poured it on the top, stuck it in the freezer, and we have these great bars. And that could be something that if you feel like you really want to have something sweet, you can have that with your tea in the afternoon or whatever, and then you don't have to feel bad that you had something sweet.
And sometimes if you absolutely really enjoy that tiramisu, or you want that ice cream sundae, just do it.
Yeah.
And then just enjoy it, and don't beat yourself up over it. Just
Yeah.
you can't do it every day, but an occasional treat
is fine. It's fine, because if you deprive yourself, that's when you're going to want it more.
Yes.
I think what happens is when you learn what to make, how to make items that are whole food items, but that are sweet, you're not even going to want that stuff anymore, because everything is going to taste so sweet to you. You're going to say, I don't even know how I ever ate this.
It's a gradual process. Yeah. So let's see. So 0 sugar Chobani, same thing. Look at the ingredients, see if there's no sugar, or they're putting something else in there. Do you want that in your body? Decide that. Again, a lot of 0 sugar, low sugar, no sugar uses these sugar alcohols. Some people have a significant number of people, maybe over 20%, can have an issue with digesting these they're more of they're lab-based kind of ingredient. Plant-based milks and the sugar in unsweetened version. Plant-based milks is, I actually have, maybe I'll see if I can send that to you too. It's from our What's Really in Your Grocery Cart program. We do a side-by-side comparison of the plant-based milks.
Mm-hmm.
They are all not the same.
No.
So if you are looking to replace your dairy and animal based milk, a cow's milk, with a plant-based milk, the only one that you're is even going to become close to that same profile of nutritional value is soy.
And a lot of people are allergic to soy.
So if you're using almond milk, you're really not getting anywhere near the nutritional value that you would from a dairy milk or a soy milk. Oat milk, so the order that I see of like nutritional value to lower is, you start with if you're looking at soy, then you're looking at oat, and then when you get to your almonds and your rice, it's really like almond juice and rice juice. It's just not that, there's not a whole lot in there that's replacing what you were having with milk. So I like my almond milk, or oat milk. Actually, I'm using more oat milk in a muesli, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
another option is you can use coconut milk.
Okay.
Coconut milk is very healthy. I use coconut milk when I'm baking. If I use almond milk, the first thing I look for is there any sugar in it? That's number one. If you want to use almond milk, make sure you get an unsweetened almond milk. Make sure there's no kind of weird preservatives in the almond milk. And what's nice, the one thing I will tell you about a number of these plant milks, you can whip them up and make them like a whipped cream or for a cappuccino and put that in, and it makes it taste much better. Put some cinnamon on the top, and cinnamon also lowers insulin. They recommend 2 teaspoons of cinnamon a day to help keep your insulin level low.
And it's also reduces inflammation. Cinnamon is an amazing spice. So the nut allergies, it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard. That is something that I'm working with a friend of mine whose daughter is gluten intolerant.
Mm-hmm.
She's celiac. Mm-hmm. And you can't do all the nut flours. Mm-hmm. So do you have, and we only have like 2 more minutes.
Okay. What I would suggest for people with nut allergies, if you're asking about, I'm assuming you're asking about snacks. So people can jump over and have an apple and have some yogurt, plain yogurt with some cinnamon on it, throw the apple in there and have that as a snack. Or they can take, we were talking before, there is a wonderful there's many recipes in here that you can try that don't have nuts in them. And there is a granola recipe. You can just leave out, if there are any nuts in there, you can leave the nuts out of there. I don't even know if I have nuts in there. Yeah,
Well, it's
I have chopped nuts of your choice.
So yeah,
You can
don't,
leave
yep,
the nuts
yep,
out.
Yep.
There's many things and many items that, like I said, if you go into my Instagram and my recipes, there are many things that don't have nuts in them, or you can take the nuts out. So that eliminates a problem with nuts. I mean, nuts are a really healthy food, but there are plenty other things. I don't know if you can have pumpkin seeds
or sunflower
or
seeds.
Sunflower seeds. Pumpkin seeds are wonderfully high in zinc. So
superfood.
It's a superfood.
So the recipes that you're getting are coconut sweeties, camper cookies, go to gluten-free granola, and you're like, yes, granola that everybody can usually have.
It's delicious.
And no bake energy bites. And then let's see, the Flaxy Maxi Power protein bars and cookies and cream Naka Yummies. And they can mean, and all these recipes can be adapted, like you're talking about nuts. You can take the nuts out and leave it the same, and it'll be perfectly fine. So it's 8 o'clock. Wow. We hope that everybody learned at least one or two things as a takeaway. But be gentle with yourself. So many people are just, have that sugar addiction, have that sugar craving. There's so much emotion that comes around with eating sweets, whether it's celebratory, but just, either making your portion smaller or just trying to bring something that you can enjoy at an event that is not loaded with all the sugar that you don't want. And feel free, if you have any other questions, you can either send me an email. I will give Marion has my email address. Feel free anytime to send me an email with your questions. I'll be happy to answer them, or leave me an instant message on my Instagram, and I'm happy to give you any type of recipe or answer any of your questions. And I thank you so much for listening and your time.
Thank you both so much. And I want to thank the audience, both in person and virtual, for attending. Marion is going to send me the packet with all the recipes and information. So I'll speak to her and get all the information. I'll be sending that out to everybody tomorrow. So I apologize you're not leaving with it tonight. But if you just wait a little bit longer, unfortunately, you'll get all that information tomorrow. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. You can reach out to us. We can relay them to Marion and Randie and pass along contact information as you wish. You'll be getting an email either from me or from Kim Dorman. She is the one who sent the emails with the Zoom links and such. So whichever, we're not sure yet, whoever can get it the fastest is who's going to be sending it. So just keep a lookout. Because we might be out of your network, just check your spam folders if you don't see it by tomorrow.
Thank you to the library for hosting us.
Thank you so much.
And we are going to be announcing some other new programs over the next couple of months. One of the things that we are looking into, that is some research that we've been following, is eating foods in a certain order, or pairing foods in a certain way that really reduces your glycemic load and the spike in your blood sugar. Which I looked at some of these things and I'm like, is that a thing? Okay, let's learn about that. So hope to see you at future programs. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you, Randie, for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom and fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.